And you mentioned a couple of things that it is, in today's job market, there's a lot of stuff going on with getting your resume together, getting the networking, getting the interviewing, even negotiating your new salary. And so you've actually brought a graphic tonight that kind of goes over some key points to help simplify the whole process. So what I'm going to do is read the points and then have you comment on each one. So the first point is resume with value-added results.
Yeah, the first thing I usually do with clients, well, it's not necessarily the first thing, but very close to the beginning, is to convert their resumes from a job description type of a resume. Not most, but a lot of people have a resume that just says trained such and such, led such and such a team, manager oversight. And all it does is describe the responsibilities, but doesn't show really how you did the job. So what we try to do is to come up with little success stories that actually occurred in specific periods of time. They're called different things by different people. I call them PSRs. There's a problem, there's a solution to the problem, and a result. So what goes in your resume is I achieved this result, which is valuable, by doing such and such. And so that's the first thing, to make the resume come alive. And a lot of times I also have my clients practice these things out loud, because that's preparing them for the interview at the same time that they're doing the resume. So the first thing is resumes with value-added success stories.
Great. What about the second bullet, self-knowledge and confidence?
Yeah, well, again, I think this is one of the hard things about being unemployed, underemployed, or even being stuck in your job, is you're not being reinforced for what you're doing, that you're good. You're not saying to yourself, boy, I'm good. You feel like something's wrong. And by practicing these success stories out loud, I've found my clients get back in touch with what they were really good at in the first place. They haven't suddenly lost it just because they've been a place too long or they're underemployed. And every one of those stories is, by doing such and such, I created value, or cut back the time it took to do something, or resolved the conflict, or ensured customer loyalty, and I use this skill to do that, and that skill to do that. And I find that they just kind of get back in touch with what they're good at, and remember that they were good, and it gives them a little more confidence in interviewing and networking and the other steps that come along.
And that's probably really helpful in a case where you've been a victim of reduction in force. So,
yeah, you feel like I was unnecessary or something, especially when one of these more recent reduction of forces where they reduce you and then they replace you with no one, and you think, oh, that's great.
Exactly. I must have been doing something important.
Right.
Compelling summary profile.
Yeah, the part that goes at the top of your resume is called summary profile, or career profile, or qualifications, or something of that sort. And when you've written the entire resume in success stories, it's not so hard to come up with this statement of what your value is and not have it sound like it's just made up. I mean, a lot of people write team player, known for action-oriented, and they just write this stuff without relation to really the stories that are inside their resume. But one of the things I have my clients do is pretend that the only thing we knew about you were these 20 stories. And every one of them, you're solving a problem by doing something, getting results, solving another problem. What would we say this woman does when she works for you based on these stories? And the germ of that becomes your profile that goes at the top. So that way you can say it with confidence, and anywhere along the line you can say, and let me give you an example of that, and let me give you an example of that, because it's built on the shoulders of this evidence. So it just makes it easier to do that.
Yeah. I would imagine that then that flows into putting together a memorable elevator pitch.
Yeah, it does. In fact, part of the reason I put this slide together is to show how these pieces are related to each other. A lot of times, I just want to take a step back, a lot of times people think, oh, the resume is one thing, and networking is another thing, and interviewing, and then negotiating, and then doing well on the job. Really, they're all part of self-branding and communicating the same message in different forms. That's why the elevator pitch, which is essentially how you would introduce yourself when you're networking, like if you're at a professional association meeting and they say, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves, what are you going to say? Ideally, I'd like you to say something, I've got 15 years experience, such and such, I'm known for producing the following results, blah, 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 the skills I use to do it is this and that, and I've solved problems such as this and that. And all of those generalizations come from the stories below it. So it gives you an easy way to introduce yourself and say, this is what I'm about. Of course, you have to do it in a more informal, loose way when you're just talking to somebody. You go, oh, thank you for asking me that. You know, you don't go, you know, but it comes directly, the heart of it comes from that message that's already in your resume, which again is built on the stories inside of it,
Right.
the PSRs.
Right. What about the persuasive cover letter?
Yeah, so usually a cover letter ties together the job description in your resume. It says what you're interested in. It says, okay, as you can see in the resume, I have this skill and that skill as you outline in your job description. So it pulls those two together. But somewhere in there, probably you're going to say, bottom line, this is why I think I'm a good candidate for the job. And I think that some version of your pitch or your profile comes in at that point. Again, you don't want to use the same words because you're using the resume and the cover letter together, but still you want to say, bottom line, this is what I can do for you, this is the value add. And so rather than having just to come up with that from nowhere, it can come directly from the, from the other steps and the other parts of what we're talking about.
And then that gets you to effective interviewing.
Yeah, again, in interviewing, there's actually several questions that all have the same answer. Tell me about yourself. What are your main strengths? Why should we hire you? What differentiates you from other candidates? And the answer to all of those, every one of them, is your elevator pitch. So it gives you the answers to many questions that you have difficulty with in an interview.
Mm-hmm. Good. And improved negotiation.
Well, there too. I'm going to make this up, but say they offer you $75,000 and you're worth $90,000. Of course, in your case, Connie, you're worth much more than that. But let's say, yeah, I know you'd agree with that. Rather than saying, I promised my grandmother I'd make $90,000, or that's not fair, you can say, I really appreciate the offer, but let me tell you some of the ways I add value that more than make up the difference between what you're offering and what I'm asking, and you just use the same thing again, the pitch. I'm known for producing such and such and such and such. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to give you that money, but you're basing it on objective criteria. So I'm hoping they can see that all this stuff is interrelated with each other.